guys, welcome to the podcast. Today we're speaking to Anthony. All right. Now Anthony, he's given us some things to work with here, and his company, Wide Open Spaces. But first of all, Anthony, tell us more about yourself and the company, how it got started.
Okay. What happened was my late wife passed away in 2017 from cancer, and I was in a situation of I had looked after her for 4 years because she was in a situation of being paralyzed for the last 4 years of her life.
Sorry to hear.
And I had my own business, and I was trying to look after her and run the business. And I was, after 4 years of that, when she passed away, I was in such bad shape. I was overweight. And I thought to myself, I better get myself out of a very deep hole. And the first thing I did was go back to what I've been doing for years with my late wife as well, was the outdoors and walking and hiking in it. So, I started hiking, and this little sort of seed had been planted many years ago about wanting to get into a business that I could take people around and show them this incredible country we've got. And the more I thought about it, the more I enjoyed it. The seed sort of started to germinate faster and faster. And what happened was we had COVID, and a month before COVID, I actually got an offer for my business. I sold it, and then suddenly I realized, well, what do I do now? And there was this whole thing about why don't I do what I always wanted.
Perfect opportunity.
So, except that when COVID came, the tourist industry was probably the first industry that took the hardest knock.
Yeah.
And everybody is saying, what are you doing? Are you crazy? And everything like that. And I said, well, look, it's going to come to an end sometime. But I used that 2 years of the COVID lockdown to actually study, and qualified as an advanced guide. And at the end of that period, although the practical that I did was not what I really wanted to do, but it was at least gave me an opportunity.
What did you do?
Practical. No, I had to do a site in Johannesburg, which wasn't really, and that was all I could do. Otherwise, I would have had to wait longer. And then after that, we were allowed to travel. The regulations allowed us to travel. So I got in my car, and I qualified as a guide for the Eastern Cape and Western Cape because I grew up in Port Elizabeth.
Nice.
Know that area backwards. And then I spent 3 months driving around looking for venues and meeting people and getting an idea as to actually what I wanted to do. And in January 2022, I started Wide Open Spaces.
Awesome. So you guys are just over a year old today.
Yeah.
That's great, man. Awesome. And you, from the sounds of it, you were in Joburg with your company?
Yeah.
What company was this?
Very, very, very different to the tourism industry. I had a company that imported high-tech security equipment from mines. So
nice.
Because of that, I traveled a lot overseas and went to places like Japan, Taiwan, and other Far East countries. But in particular, Japan and Taiwan, I did some incredible hiking. When you realize what an incredible country we've got, where we know what a sunrise looks like, and went on hikes in forests and national forests and national parks, a couple of hours from Taipei, where people go there, not so much for the hiking, but to actually see the sunrise and the sunset because it's so smoggy in Taipei. And had beautiful, beautiful hiking experiences in those countries. And then also in 2000, I had the privilege of doing Kilimanjaro, which was another milestone because it was when you have your own business, you get into ruts and that, and I just needed something to motivate me to keep going, and went on the Kilimanjaro trip with my wife and a group of friends, and again it just motivated me. And funny enough, it was there again where this little thing was always bobbing around, this little seed, and it's just, as I said, I've continued walking over the years, although that 4 year period probably was the only time that I didn't really get out much. In fact, I didn't do anything. I went off, as I said to many of my friends, I went out of the system or off the radar for 4 years. because she was in a very difficult situation and didn't want a carer and things like that. So, yeah, but it taught me. I learned a lot, and it taught me an incredible amount about life when you have to help somebody in that situation. And one thing I learned was it's not good to say, "Oh, woe is me," or why is it happening to me? Because we met people that were in far more difficult situations than we were, and we had a lot of help from friends and family, and yeah, it was just an incredible experience.
No, I can't say I fully understand, but we were in a similar situation. So my life ambition was snakes and spiders. It was like everything I was into. And I'd been working at Lorna Snake Sanctuary for 2 years straight. Prior to that, I was volunteering there. I grew up in their house basically from a young age. I saw the owners' kids grow up. So I got the opportunity to be the head curator at the Snake Sanctuary. I was there for 2 years, and my dad is a diabetic, and he is allergic to insulin. So the mixture wasn't very good, and he got neuropathy, and he was in the bed for a full year. Now, I helped him set up the business. We used to work like this. So I was at boarding school. He'd work the week, and then weekends, when I do come home, I'd work a shift so he could get off. I've been working in tourism, like I said, since I can remember. I did like game drives where I'd have a ranger drive for me, and I'd be the one talking since the age of 16 already. Sure. Any case. But so he got sick, and someone had to take over the family business at that point because it was sustaining our whole family. And my parents also had a lot of foster children. I've got one biological brother, and then my sister isn't biological. She's also adopted, but she was adopted at a very young age. So I see her as biological. And then we've got foster kids, foster brothers and sisters. So I've got lots of family. Any case, so the business was supporting them all, so I had to come back. The main reason I ever stuck on with my dad at that point was we would bash heads the whole time with, this is my idea, this is your idea. And he had a more like, his booking system was writing everything down in his journal. You're booked for the 1st of January. And that was his system. And I said, listen, we need new age things, and we need to advance. So bit by bit, there was a lot of small things, but when he was in the bed, I came back and I started changing things the way I wanted.
Sorry.
No, wait. Like I said earlier on, I love animals. But so he was in the bed. I could do whatever I wanted. Started upgrading certain things, and kind of, it's a bad way to put it, but any business is still a business. So I advanced our income with 150%. So that was good. And he came to after about a year, and now he's back to normal again. But afterwards he said, listen, well, it seems like you know what you're doing. You can have the company. And then I just grew the company from there, started developing, going a bit more advanced and so on. So we were in a similar field where you, like you said, you kind of got put into the situation due to other circumstances. Well, I was in guiding already, but I got taken out of something that I really, really liked and went into something that I still like. It's just not, it wasn't my number one passion. But working with people is, so you make it work, and it worked out quite well. I mean, we're a very well-rated company. Pre-COVID, I haven't checked recently, but pre-COVID, we were the number one guided tour in the Oudtshoorn area. So versus TripAdvisor. So yeah, I'm quite happy with that. But all right, quickly, you mentioned something earlier, and I want to try and get back to it. You've climbed Kilimanjaro, you said. Do you have any other goals? This morning I was listening to Joe Rogan, and they were talking about Mount Everest and K2 and those places. And then they were talking about some of the really difficult and dangerous mountains. And there was a mountain range, I don't know where it was, but they have a 29% mortality rate. I can't remember the name of the mountain, unfortunately. I just listened to it this morning. But 29% of people that try and attempt to summit it actually don't make it.
Yeah.
Mount Everest, there are, I think, 300 bodies on Mount Everest at the moment, which is insane to think about. And they just can't go get them, they can't go pick them up because it's too dangerous. I think with the advancement of technology, one of these days people might be able to do it. But like some of the bodies, it's so normal there that some of the bodies have names, like Old Green Boots is one of them that they have there. So do you have plans of summiting some of these extreme mountains?
Well, quite interesting. After we climbed Kilimanjaro, then everybody in that group, funny enough, were on this thing about doing the 7 summits.
Okay, yeah. Just quickly explain the 7 summits.
7 summits are the highest peaks or summits on the 7 continents.
Yeah.
And after a couple of months, when we realized some of the expenses, I mean, today you say, you just mentioned something quite interesting about the number of bodies that are on Everest. I think that's largely because of the fact that if you've got money, and I'm talking about a lot of money, anyone can climb Everest. You don't even have to be, just for the sake of saying I've climbed Everest, you can do Everest if you've got the money. And that's a bit of an unfortunate thing. I mean, they've now clamped down apparently on people doing it. You have to have had a certain amount of experience in that. But at the end of the day, it is money that has enabled a lot of people to do the actual peak or summit climb, which I think is not really the right thing to do. Base Camp Everest is a great 2-week trek, lots of fun, which is a lot better for people to do who've got not much mountaineering experience. So we then decided rather to try and do the 7 summits, which means, I mean, there's one of the Sherpas that I'm sure you've heard of. I can't remember his name now, but he got funding and he did like the 7 summits plus a whole lot of other things within the space of about 2 months, which is unheard of.
I'm pretty sure he was on, I think, Joe Rogan's podcast at some point.
I'm sure it was.
Yeah.
I'm sure he was. It's an amazing feat. But you see, that type of guy is the guy that can climb Everest.
Definitely.
And also, I think other factors influenced our decision not to do it. So when it comes to, what I still want to do, there's a lot that I still want to do, but it's not necessarily trying to prove who I am or prove. It's more to give back. And one of the things that I am looking at doing is, when you leave school, and over the years I've become sort of more I've become to know more about the plight of some of my schoolmates that haven't done so well or have had handicaps in life and that. And we've started talking about doing a walk from Port Elizabeth to Cape Town along the coast.
Oh, wow.
To raise funds for some of these guys. And those are the type of things that maybe it's because I'm older and not so adventurous. I am adventurous, but I'm not going to go put my life at risk trying to go up the Himalayas or Mount Everest or something like that. I'd rather try and do something that is possible to do, but then also has a good ending in terms of being able to raise funds for somebody, and at the end of that excursion or whatever you want to call it, you can give something back to a person, and that links to why I started. Another reason why I started Wide Open Spaces, and just as a matter of interest, where the name Wide Open Spaces comes from.
So you guys can see here. That'll add it in later as well.
When I was very young, in fact, I was at primary school. My parents and some other parents took some of us youngsters to a farm in the Grafton-Net area. And in those days, they had a thing, I think it still goes, called Farmy Days, where you could go and spend a couple of days during the school holidays on a working farm. And my parents took me, I was a late lamb, so they were much older than I was. We went with 3 other families. And we went for this long weekend to the farm. And at the end of the weekend, it came for the parents to pay or settle up their accounts and head off back to Port Elizabeth. And the owner of the farm said to my father, they were all standing outside, and he had an office. And he said to my father, "Can you please wait?" And my father took it in a bad way and thought,
Anthony's in trouble.
No, don't get pushy. I'll call you when I want you to come through. And he said to my mother, "This guy said I must wait," and he got quite upset with it. In any case, the other parents paid, and my father went in with my mother, and I was playing. Obviously, I had no idea what was going on, and he said to my folks, "We enjoyed having you guys so much that we don't want you to pay."
Oh, wow.
And he said, "I didn't want to say it in front of the other parents." And that was in probably 1971. And from that day onwards, my parents became incredibly good friends with this family. So every year I used to go to the farm. They used to put me on the train in Port Elizabeth, or Gqeberha as it's called now. And I'd overnight to Graaff-Reinet. I'd get picked up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I'd go to the farm for a month.
Yo, that's awesome.
And because of that farm Doornbach, where I now have take walking experiences out of, I use it as an accommodation venue. I've been going there for over 50 years, and I know that farm backwards, and I know the area, New Bethesda, which is quite a well-known.
Oh, nice, yeah.
It's 9 k's from the farm, and I'm sort of part of the community there. You know, I'm quite well known. I know most of the farmers around there, and I know the area and the farm and everything. So it's a very close to heart thing. So one of the reasons, as I said, why it's called Wide Open Spaces is because a lot of the Dutch and German tourists like going to the Karoo. And I asked Piet van Heerden, who owns the farm now, he's taken it over from his father, why there's so many Dutch and German people, in particular Dutch people in that area, who even own farms there now. And he said they like the wide open spaces.
Oh,
and
cool.
that name just rang. And then during COVID, my partner, whose brother-in-law is a doctorate, has got a doctorate in zoology and mentors doctoral students in Botswana. He's a British guy. He was interviewed on one of these similar podcasting, and we were listening to it, and he kept on saying wide open spaces, this and wide open. And Anne turned around and she said, "That's the name of this business that you want to start."
Yeah,
and that's how it started. So. And it does make sense because of COVID, wide open spaces, low viral areas, and that's the whole thing. I take my walking experiences are not on the common and well-known trails like Otter and Fish River Canyon. 95% of my trails are in areas that people have never heard of. We don't pass other hikers. You know, I've got this thing about when I walk, I don't want to have people coming in different directions and passing a whole lot of people, because then you know everyone's doing the same hike. I go away for 3 days, 4 days, and it's not that we're walking from camp to camp. We come back to the same venue every night, but we take people. You don't find
there's no one else.
Anybody else.
That's awesome. I mean, just thinking about the Bethesda area, it's like such a nice area. I think, like a lot of guari trees and things like that, and it makes sense, the wide open spaces, because there's no really tall trees or anything. If I haven't been there in ages. That we drove through Bethesda. We looked at it on the way to Addo once, and yeah, it's such a nice place. And if you get onto certain areas, there's these valleys, and you can just see for miles down these valleys.
Well, if you look here, I mean, this photograph that was used for the sign is actually taken on the anthonyr.
Oh, wow.
And that's part of the area that I do is also around here. So the space for me is important. In May last year, I was very privileged to do a course at a nature reserve between Middelburg and Graaff-Reinet called Bergplaats. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's owned by
Bergplaats is a common name, so no.
Yeah. It's a nature reserve that was bought. It was a farm called Bergplaats that was bought by Princess Irene of the Netherlands in 1998.
Isn't it just before Willemore?
No.
Because I know there's a farm there as well.
Close to the Kampersberg Mountain.
Okay. No.
And a friend of mine who is the head of the Robberg Coastal Corridor Project in Plet, Kai Haynes, he said to me, if you can, go on and try and get onto their courses. And they are subsidized by the foundation, the Princess Irene Foundation. So I sent an email saying that I've just started and this is what I do. Could I come on the course? And I was very lucky to go last year in May. And the course I did was called Spirit of the Wild. And it's an intuitive wildlife guiding course. So it's not a knowledge base. They don't teach you about, how much a springbok weighs and all those type of facts. It teaches you other things about when you walk in the veld or in nature. For example, how to approach, if you've got clients, how to approach game without them running away. Because everybody wants to get as close as possible. And the minute you start walking towards a buck or eland or whatever, they're going to run away. And so you get taught how to approach. It takes a bit longer, but in the end, you actually get quite a lot closer, and you can take, and your clients can take photographs, and the animals feel quite at ease.
There's the technique where you walk alongside, So 100%.
You know, and we did exercises in the veld about this, your space. You know, using, for example, we were broken up into pairs, and this we did indoors and outdoors, and then you say to the other person, okay, I'm standing here, walk as close as you can to me, and I'll tell you when to stop. And some people, they were like 3 meters away, and you'd say stop, thinking they're right there. And that was giving you the idea about how animals feel. You know, if you walk straight towards them, you think an animal's just going to say hi. You know, you're not going to do anything. These are the things that I learned there, and it actually changed my life a lot, because I'll tell you why. I was the oldest by a long way, and there were, and I was obviously I've had a privileged life, but there were rangers from Sandparks, Cape Nature, young guys that have come out of villages that were there as well, and we had to open up quite a lot during this time in terms of getting to know each other. I mean, the first opening exercise we did just to break the ice, because you could see the young guys and women that were there as well. They saw us as the white man, and to break that down, it was quite interesting.
Yeah.
We were walking in the veld, because every day the classroom is in the veld. You get up in the morning and you walk the whole day, and you come back, and it starts over the next day. The first exercise was, we got to a place we had been walking for about an hour, and we were told to sit in a rock and just close our eyes and to listen to nature. And suddenly I started hearing a whole lot of other sounds that I hadn't heard while we were walking. And after that, we stood up, and they said, right, take a partner, not somebody that you know from the group, just somebody completely that you haven't even said much to, and go and stand in front of that person. And what we had heard while we were sitting there were the baboons in the mountains, and they were getting closer and closer. Obviously, they were wanting to find out what we were doing there. And Wayne Maspero, the guy that was him and his wife do the course there now, he said, right, make that barking noise to the guy in front of you. And that broke the ice. I mean, I was barking like a baboon in front of this young black guy, and he was killing himself laughing. And then he did it to me. And I promise you, that little exercise broke the ice immediately, to the point that we were, you know, at the end of that week, we were like everybody. The females and males were like brothers and sisters. And that for me was a huge thing, because I realized that, you know, we all live, and I think society and the way that we live today, we do live around these artificial walls, because we're so scared to do this and so scared to do that. And this was a great way. And I thought, this is what I want to do for my walking experiences. I want people to not come for a walk. And, you know, this is another issue that I've had to deal with. Everybody's got these smart watches or smartphones, and it's how many steps they have to do. And you know, they're and they're so scared to get miss a call. And I say to them, we're walking in areas where you, and on my documentation it says, you know, there's limited access to internet, only if at the lodge of a house there may be Wi-Fi, but in the veld you've got no. So I tell them to put their phones on plane, because they want to take photos, that's fine. But the sitting down, like for example, the first group I ever took was actually to the Karoo, and I told them that we're going to do an exercise, and I thought, they're probably going to want to murder me. And I said, we're going to sit down and just be quiet and just listen. And I thought, 15 minutes, that's quite long. But I said, okay, let's do it for 15 minutes. And they all chose their rock, sat down, and after 15 minutes I said, okay guys, and I couldn't believe my ears when I heard, is it 15 minutes already? And that's become quite a big thing now, where I say to people, grab a rock, don't sit next to somebody, make sure your phone is off, on plane mode, and just sit and listen, and try and just relax, breathe deeply. It's not trying to get spiritual or anything like that, but that is something that I believe has helped me over the years now. I love walking alone. In fact, on your notes, you said, what is your scariest, one of your scariest encounters was being clever and walking on Cape Town. Now,
no.
Alone, it started off just as a casual walk, and then everybody said they wanted to go back. We started at the cable car and went along that pipe route, which goes above Camps Bay, Bantry Bay, and Buckoven and all that. And they all said they're going back, and I said, no, I want to carry on. So they said, well, why don't you go over the mountain at the 12 Apostles and head off to Hout Bay, and when you get there, phone us and we'll fetch you. I didn't have water. I didn't have my glasses, my reading glasses. I had a phone. I had running shoes, a T-shirt, and short pants. And as I got up to the top of, just above the 12 Apostles, the mist came over, and it came over with a vengeance. I couldn't see a meter, and I didn't know what to do. And I couldn't see my phone. I couldn't see where I was. And I spent about 6 hours up there. And eventually I managed to find my way back, found the path down, and I phoned them, my son, and they came to fetch me.
Hectic.
But that was scary. You know, I mean, I know it's Table Mountain, it was not Kilimanjaro, it wasn't Everest. But I was, and I had no water, I was cold.
Friends of mine had a similar experience. So what we'll do is if we go for a weekend camping, we don't go to a place where you put up a tent. We generally don't take a tent. You just go up, you choose a mountain, we're going to see, let's see if we can summit that mountain. And you go up. And I wasn't with this particular experience, but we're like 4 or 5 people that do it on a regular basis. And most of us couldn't do it at that point. And 2 of them said they're going to go on their own, and they go up. And these 2, they're both quite good hikers, but I'm the nature guy in the group. So I'll be like, you can eat this plant, this water is fine, this will not. So they go up, they've got the water and everything, and up they go. And it's a 2-day situation. So they go up, they run out of water. And they find water puddles in the rocks, and they're like, okay, we'll drink this. And then the next morning, the mist set in. And they had to get down, and they were stuck on this mountain. They can't go down. Everything is wet because there's no pathway where we go. So you got to Ubuntu bash through everything. Everything is wet, so then you start slipping, and it's not safe. So they did the good choice of sitting still and wait for this mist to pass over. And it just took like a couple of hours, and they got home so late that night as well. Get back to the vehicle. So I understand what you're saying there. Just quickly, you said about this sitting still, and it resonates with me because like sitting in one spot. So on the farm that I grew up on, Huckerville, Santuk Southern Comfort, we used to do like group excursions and group tours, and specifically school events, where we take the kids onto the farm and we do activities with them, team building, things like that. And one of the punishments we had was we called it the fire hose, but it's a active horse farm. We do horse safaris in the Niza Forest. So if someone did something wrong, if the kids were rude, if they didn't tidy up their bed in the morning, they get the fire hose, which is you stand there and your whole team gets to pelt you with horse dung. So you got like a big bag of horse poop and you just throw. And one of the things we did was the night march in the Niza Forest. Now, people that haven't been in the Niza Forest don't realize how dense it is. There could be an elephant 20 meters from you, you won't see it, right? Meaning, if you look up at night, there's no light coming through. It's pitch dark. You don't see stars, moon, nothing. So the excursion works like this. We have a long rope. All the kids leave cell phones, everything behind. And not a rope, sorry, we used to hold hands. So you used to hold hands. And we'd have one guide in front and usually me in the back. So my dad would be lead, I'd be in the back. And we've got a big loop in the forest that we do with the horse safari. It was the 1 hour trip. And we walk, it's pitch dark. Beforehand, you tell the stories about the bush pig and how dangerous bush pig are. And we've got leopard in the Niza Forest, which is, I know leopard can be dangerous, but they're harmless because they're in an open space. You're not cornering them there,
Yeah, exactly.
anything like that. So it's a harmless animal at that point. We've got the Niza elephants, and then always there's like a phone call while everyone's sitting there and we're discussing everything. There's a phone call and like, oh no, a robber just escaped and he's in the Niza Forest somewhere. You know, this whole story to get the kids all angsty. And then we go out, and you always have the kids that talk the most, like, oh no, a bush pig, it's nothing, I'll break its back, and wah wah. do this walk, and at some point during the walk, I tap your shoulder. As soon as I tap your shoulder, you sit. You let go of the guy's hand in front of you, and you sit. And we walk a bit. And also, because it's dark, you're blind, you're disorientated. Not even the guides. We don't use torches either. We have them at hand, but we don't use them because you want this experience of pitch darkness and getting lost. And the way we find our path is it's a circle route. Now, obviously in the forest, there's lots of leaves on the pathway, on the sides, but on the pathway, because we track it regularly, it's like every day we do safaris, you don't have much leaves. The leaves get crunched up or moved to the side. So you walk, and as soon as you feel soft under your feet, you go back to the right and you walk. But no, so you manage your way through like that. And the kids have no idea what we're doing or how we're doing it. And we don't sit them far apart, 20 meters, but we tell them to be quiet because you don't want animals attracted to you. And they just sit there. And we leave them, like the total duration is basically half an hour to 45 minutes that they're on their own. So we do the loop, and as you come back, you pick up the last guy first again. And it's always the kids that talk the most or did the best. And you get back home, they got pants wet and something. But the experience that those kids have, because you ask them, what sounds did you hear? Like you said, what sounds did you hear? And how the kids could hear things and the rustle and the imagination. And it's like that time they spend with themselves, it makes them nicer people. That's what we experience. Because like I said, these guys, the guys that talk the most and went like, oh, well, they end up being the nicest guys. And the next morning they go from, like the previous day they had like, oh yeah, I've got rich parents, because Knysna is full of rich people, right? And we're in the Knysna area. So it's like rich parents, snobby children. They go from these little brats to the nicest kids ever. And you'd like forget maybe your whistle and like, sir, can I go get your whistle? And this bloody kid would run out and get it for you. So it's really amazing. And it's an experience that most people won't get because you live in this hustle and bustle and busy life. I was thinking about, you were telling about these people in, I think it was Japan, that have to travel to go see the sunrise. Taiwan. All right. So we had a similar experience. My tours are sunrise tours. So we get out early in the morning and you see the sunrise and you go down to the meerkats. And this gentleman was taking loads of pictures of the sun. Like loads. And my dad goes to me and says, listen, one of the most common things that happen is people run out of memory card space on the tour. So save some pictures or some memory card space for the meerkats. And the guy's like, no, this is special. We're like, yeah, it's special, but I mean, it's not. The meerkats are still coming. He says, no, you don't understand. This is his first sunrise ever. Now, asked him, he said,
first time that I've heard that.
He's 54 years old. He's never seen a sunrise because he lives in some city in America. And like you said, it's got that haziness over the air pollution. And not just that, but he says to him, the sun would rise over a building. So if he does see the sun, it's over the building. It's not over a mountain or anything.
The natural environment. Yeah.
So it's nice to hear that we're not the only people that have experienced that, and how weird it is for some people to have never seen the sunrise, which is something we do every day. It's like, it's normal for us.
Yeah.
Things that we take on as normal is not normal for everyone. So yeah. And then also body language. You were talking about the body language and how to approach animals. And this is something that people just don't realize is body language says so much. And my easiest example that I use to explain to the clients is if me and you are walking and I point out underneath a tree, there's a lion sleeping. I'm like, look, there's a lion sleeping there. You're going to be like, wow, cool. Take some pictures. If that lion just stands up and casually walks towards you, your brain goes from wow, lion to oh crap, I'm breakfast, So that's such an easy explanation. And animals and humans exhibit mostly the same behavior. We just have different words for it. So yeah, I always compare animal behavior to human behavior if I can, and I explain it in a way that the people can understand, because otherwise people just go like, oh, it's animal behavior. It's not. It's just normal behavior. You exhibit the same. Body language, once again, if you go to a nightclub and there's a bouncer and the bouncer's standing there against the wall, and you're like, yeah, it's like, well, you're going to be like, this is a chop. But then, standing there, he's got his arms folded, his chest puffed up. It's like, this guy is a gorilla. I'm not going to mess with him. It's just the thing. So body language says a lot how you approach the animals. We had the tactic, and I love employing this, if you're in a encamped environment, like most South African lodges. If you're guiding, people like to sneak up on, let's take example, a rhino. You're sneaking up on this rhino, quiet. Shh. Yes, that is one way of doing it, but the problem is a mistake can happen. Someone breaks a branch, your cell phone starts ringing, someone sneezes. Now you've crept up to 20 meters from this rhino. He does not know you're there. All of a sudden there's a noise that aggravates him, and one or two things happens. He either runs away, good, or he charges, trying to find out what's making this noise. You're in a dangerous situation. So our approach always, because we did a lot of horse safaris on the guides, or on these guided safaris, and our approach is always, if you see the rhino, talk loud. Say, hi rhino, how you doing? Just random crap. And then judge the behavior of the rhino. If he looks up and looks at you, goes back down to feeding, it means he's in a good mood, because animals have moods. He's in a good mood, you can approach, and we could get up to about 5 meters from them. We'd get closer and then let them approach us if they want to. And we had these rhinos coming right up to the horses before, because they see you as another horse. They don't really see you as a human when you're on horseback, which is awesome. You could get closer. And then other days you see the rhino, you see the little tail curling up and down, it's not in a good mood. You're like, okay, well, we're not approaching them today. So you can assess the situation much easier when you let the animal know you're there. And it's not for everyone. I mean, that's just our approach to getting to get closer to animals for the most part.
But it also, people are also told about, like for example, snakes, how dangerous they are.
Oh, no.
In March, I had a German lady who I took for a walk at Ubuntu Wildlife Sanctuary, and
Ubuntu, just so you guys know, we'll add that in as well. We got the poster.
And she said to me just before we started the walk that she is petrified of snakes. That I must tell her when we're going into parts that there are snakes. In any case, so we started walking, and then we went into this narrow section of this ravine at the bottom, and I felt that she was like really behind me, but literally she was touching me from behind. That's how close she was. And I said, "What? Is there something wrong?" I said, I told you to walk behind me, but not that close. She said, "Well, what about the snakes?" And then I said to her, if we see a snake, the snake's not going to be hiding in the tree waiting to jump on us.
Oh.
The snake will only do something if we corner it or it feels threatened. So if a snake comes, all we do is we just stand still, keep quiet. And I said, remember, a snake can feel our vibrations in advance. So they will already be alert and we don't even know it. I mean, that's how it is. And slowly but surely, I saw that she had realized, but she had been told that snakes are dangerous and snakes will attack you and snakes will bite you. And by the end of that afternoon, or the day that I had with her, she was far more relaxed, and she started to understand that it's not like, we didn't see a snake, but...
people have this snakes on a plane idea, I don't know if you watch that movie, like snakes jumping out and grabbing people and
ridiculous. And unfortunately, that's what it's reality. People are petrified without even having an encounter.
The thing is, it's very, very rare for any animal actually to just attack a human. There's usually a set of circumstances that has to happen. Like lions. Lions don't go around roaming and hunting people. And in South Africa, we don't experience it that much, but up in, we went up to Botswana in the Delta area. And their spar, like the local grocery store, sometimes has to close because there's lions roaming around in front of it, right? Now that's like in the built-up area, those lions just walk in there. If you take the Maasai, if they were struggling to hunt, they would take the lion's kill. They have 4 warriors, walk up together, make themselves look big and intimidating, body language, and approach the lions, and the lions would actually back off from their own kill that they just made. And that's something you get learned or get taught from a young age, like don't mess with an animal and its food. And it just shows you that animals don't attack people. Snake, for example, if it attacks you, what is the motivation? There has to be a motivation.
Absolutely.
He can't eat you. They don't chew food. They swallow food whole. So there's nothing. A big snake, yes, they can see you as food. Reptiles is one of the few animals out there that will actively actually hunt humans if they can eat you, like a crocodile, for example. But there's some interesting stuff happening now recently with the divers where they can dive down underwater. And once you're underwater, the crocodile accepts you. And even with like our South African Nile crocodiles, which is seen to be one of the more aggressive species, them in the Australian saltwaters, people swim underwater with these crocodiles in their environment, go into their den, and the crocodile does not attack them or bite them or anything. But crocodiles are one of the few reptiles out there or few animals out there that will see human as a food source. Them, and I think polar bears is another one, because polar bears only eat meat. It's like all they have, and they fight to survive up there in those frozen wastelands. So yeah, they're one of the few animals. Everyone's always scared about orcas and killer whales. There's been 0 killer whale attacks in nature, right? No one has ever been attacked by a killer whale out in the ocean. Only in captivity that it's happened. So once again, and you see these video clips on social media all the time about people swimming and the orcas coming. That is one of my biggest dreams. So is to swim with orcas.
We'll go to Fleet.
Well, I'm on my way. Starboard and seaboard. Yeah. They've been in the Mossel Bay region as well. Starboard and seaboard. Yeah. So yeah, they've been in the area. I'd love to do that. I actually want to set up a meeting with Ocean Blue Adventures and have a go out, see what we can do. But yeah, that's something else. But yeah, that's my favorite sea animals is the orcas. So yeah, it's very rare for an animal to attack you.
It's also one of my favorites.
Oh really? They're so intelligent.
Fish eagle.
Fish eagle, nice. We had the privilege of, at the lodge, there was a big dam, there's lots of bass and carp in the dam. At the lodge one of the lodges I used to work at, and you'd often have a fish eagle hunt in plain sight. I just never managed to get a picture. Back then I didn't have any fancy cameras or anything. So I'd love to go back with more equipment and get those pictures. But you would see it on a regular how they hunt and how they go down and grab these fish. Yes. All right, quickly tell me, we've spoken about Ubuntu just a little bit. You say it's a new facility that's opening up, and it's a rehabilitation center.
A rescue center.
A rescue center, sorry.
They actually are a fully registered and certified non-profit organization, and they're registered as Ubuntu Rescue Center. They currently have 15 lions and 2 tigers. And these predators have been rescued from all over the world and locally, from a canned lion farm, from a breeding farm locally, and from one of the so-called game parks in the Eastern Cape in Port Elizabeth. And they've all come to the rescue centre traumatized, seriously traumatized. I've seen the animals only since last year, and they are in immaculate health. And they are not in cages. They are in enclosures of between 1.5 and 2.5 hectares.
Oh, really nice.
They wanted to have bigger enclosures, but also because of restrictions or limitations, not restrictions, limitations to funding, putting up fences and electric fencing, and they've got solar to ensure that the fencing is electrified. It's an expensive venture, so they've got these enclosures. They've got bush, and just to hear stories that when some of these predators came out of their crates they come from South America. There's a pride of 4 lionesses and 1 male that came from the Ukraine. When they walked out of their crates onto the sand, they turned back immediately, went back. They'd never felt sand in their lives before. So, the whole philosophy behind the 2 guys that started it is that they've got obviously a passion for predators, and they said they wanted to try and help provide these animals with the last years of their lives in peace and tranquility. And that's exactly what to see how some of these lions, the one lion that came from Port Elizabeth, it's a white lion, was incredibly aggressive, but seriously aggressive, because there were 2 lions and a lioness in this enclosure, and they used to feed 1 piece of meat between the 2 male lions.
Oh, shucks.
It fought. And this is another thing that we do with people that go there. They often say, well, why don't you release the lions? These animals wouldn't last a week on their own. They've always had human interaction. And for them, a human, based on the fact that they've been in these terrible conditions, a human for them is the enemy completely. So it takes time for them to get that confidence. And the guy that looks after them is absolutely passionate about every single animal. And, you know, he feeds them once a day. He's with them all the time. And yeah, it's just an amazing opportunity for these animals. And they get a lot of requests for other predators that need homes. And unfortunately, they said they don't want to overdo it because they're not trying to. This is a place that they want to try and develop slowly. They've only been on this farm now for about, I think it's 3 years. And I got involved with them last year when they contacted me and said they'd like to set up hiking trails. I went out there. I first Googled Ubuntu Wildlife Sanctuary. They've got a website. And when I went, I actually said, I'm coming to have a look. This website's not good enough. Came there and I was blown away by just the passion and the whole environment and the facility they've set up. So then I started with 3 trails that I've set up, and we officially launched the hiking trails in December last year. And we invited, I think about 65 people came. And since then, I do day walks. They've got a facility there. Their funding comes from volunteers, and they were working in collaboration with a international software company who had a social responsibility program, and was sending some of their staff every month, a group of between 5 and 8 people. They pay for the week there, but they get accommodation, 3 meals a day, and they work in the sanctuary. And then whatever they pay, the company would give as a donation the equivalent amount. So that was quite good. And then just recently, this program has gone on hold because that company's had to go through a retrenchment program. And so they said while they do that, they can't continue with this because it just doesn't go down well. So we've now realized that we need to dig into the local market. And I take groups quite regularly to Ubuntu. We do a walk and we go to a cave where we found sand rock art paintings, which has these not very much information about it. So I'm also going to in next week. In fact, I'm going with a lady from the George area. We're going to have a look and see what we can find out more. And there's some more caves that we're going to look for.
Yeah, that would be Khoisan. That would be their area. Yeah.
But there's very little documented about that. But just going back to December, when we launched, there was a couple that were invited. They were actually referred by an estate agent that I invited, and he had sold them a house because they moved from Cape Town to George to retire. And after the walk, the guy came up to me and he said, would you like me to, I found the rock formations around here incredibly interesting. Would you like me to put together a little survey report for you? And I thought, he's just making conversation. I said, yeah, it'd be lovely. And a week later, he emailed me the document. And it was absolutely stunning. So I phoned him up and I said, can we have coffee? And he said, sure. And I sat down with him and I said, would you be interested in helping me set up an educational program for kids and for adults? People who go on walks that not everybody just wants to walk. People like to see and learn about nature and the rocks and the plants and that. And as I said to you earlier, I'm not an expert. I didn't study a science degree in zoology, botany, whatever. So from this, he now and I went back more than a few times. We've walked the trails, and he's documented that whole farm to the point where the information is more than just something for people to learn about. It's actually for the farmer and for the people in the area.
Yeah.
They've all asked him for that information. And we want to do this on a number of farms in the area. Then I've got another lady that I use on my trails. She's also got a doctorate in zoology, and she does research in the Langkloof. So
beautiful.
I bring her on my walks, and she turns over just about every rock, and she sees and she explains, and people find it incredibly fascinating. And that takes the thing about, when I say, how long is the walk? That's one of the first questions. How long are we walking, or how far are we walking today? And if I say 12 kilometers or 15 kilometers, and they look around and they say, see rolling hills and all, they go, gee, that's long. But when you do it, when you're stopping, and 15 kilometers actually isn't far.
You don't notice it when you're walking, and it's you know that thing where they say if you eat in front of the television, you eat more than you have to? It's exactly the same with like an outdoor activity like that, hiking. When you stop and you make it interesting, you're talking about, let's say you flip a rock, there's lots of scorpions in this area. You get the Cape Black scorpion. If you're on that side, you would find some of the thick tails, the Europlectus and so on. So there's like scorpions, there's potential for snakes, there's small insects, bugs, creepy crawlies. I'm pretty sure you find some tortoises in the area.
Absolutely. Chameleons, chameleon.
That's awesome.
All these things. I mean, we've picked up on one of our first walks that Joy and I, this zoologist, did. We came across a striped harlequin snake.
Oh, beautiful. They're super rare.
And she got so excited. I thought she was on something because she was running after it. And I said, "Dad, be careful." And she said, "No, you don't often find this where we were." And this was near between Anthonyr and Uniondale.
Okay, I was about to say, because they shouldn't be down here. Down here we get the spotted harlequin.
Sorry, the spotted.
Oh, is it the spotted? Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
Not the striped. Spotted
Yeah.
harlequin.
So I was about to say, like, the striped harlequin. It's like, that's
Yeah.
super rare. I don't think they should be here.
No.
Okay, spotted,
harlequin.
nice.
But I mean, those are the type of things. And then we also found a euphorbia on one of the walks that we did. And she's got to contact a professor, I think it's Jan Flock, who's a plant specialist. And she took a photo. I actually almost stood in it.
Euphorbia is a plant, right?
Yeah,
It's a flower.
It's like a cactus.
Yeah.
She
Euphorbia
said,
it's got a milky latex on
That's
the
right,
inside. That's
right.
what
But
it
this
explains.
almost looks like a pin cushion. It's in the rock.
Wow.
And she sent it off the picture of it, and he said that this was very uncommon in that area, and it was very rare, and we must get more information on it and take more photographs. So, this is when you're walking and she's with you. These are the things that happen, that even, people who don't know much about nature are part of. She's doing research while she walks, and she finds this incredibly rewarding for herself as well. So then I got her into the program, and basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to develop an edutourism type of program that I can take people on walks, and there are certain things, not everything we can document, but there are some very interesting things that we can document. And we even have thought of the idea of maybe instead of putting a sign, you have a QR code.
Ah,
And
yeah.
so people can just take that QR code, and when they get home, they can go to the link and find out more information about it. And the school that I'm involved with now, who've done a camp with us, said that what they would do with that is that they would make assignments or set assignments for their students based on those links. So that when they get back, they say, right, we went to Ubuntu, I want you to write an essay or whatever on that particular rock formation or that particular plant or whatever. So it's something that, and I see it not only for students or kids, I see it for adults as well.
Yeah. The thing is, people want what we don't have much time, but I'll put this in. So when people, especially foreign tourism, when people come to South Africa and they like South Africa, they often come back, right? You get returning clients. They've seen the big five, they've seen the rhino, they've seen the leopard. They want to find out more. And most of your, I'd say, generic guides, they were trained in how to entertain people with these big animals. Then you get the people with the passion for guiding. And then they go in depth and they go look at the smaller things as well. They go learn about these plants like you've been mentioning. They go learn about the scorpions and the snakes and everything else. And that is what I call, you call it a complete guide, but a guide will never be complete because Jackie just said, you never know everything. There's so much, there's way too much. But to me, if I'm out on a safari with someone, a complete guide to me is someone that would talk to me about anything, like not just the big animals, like, oh, there's a kudu and the kudu has a spiral horn and you can look through his horn and see, the basics. That I want someone that can talk about, look, a bird caller. That's my weakness. I struggle with birds. That and astrology. I can't see pictures in the sky, but there's people that can do that. So it's just not my field, but I can tell you the basics and I can hold a conversation in all these fields at least.
Yeah.
That's my definition of a complete guide. But yeah, we don't have much time left.
Okay.
Just quickly, Ubuntu, you say not anyone can just go there, so they have to go through a third party like yourself, maybe.
Yeah, to come hiking. If they want to do a trail, a day walk, we are busy setting up tents so that people can stay there for weekends, 9x4, self-catering, sort of glamping
Nice.
type situation, because the walks there are so spectacular. And right next door, on the boundary, is a 14,000 hectare Cape Nature Reserve that's unused, and we're currently in negotiations with them to be able to have access to it for walks, for trails, and even horse trails.
Nice.
We might do, but that's something in the future. But yeah, it's just up the road. As I said, it's a wonderful place. The school that I took in April, we planted trees. They were given lectures about a lecture on the predators and why they were there, and also showing something you must know about what an enrichment is when you for wildlife,
for animals. So it's like mimicking natural behavior for them. Yeah.
And they were given the opportunity to make these things out of cardboard boxes and rope, and then we gave them to the lions after that. And you can't believe that a lion can look like a cat playing with a
Yes.
And these kids were absolutely blown away. In fact, the school is booked for next year again.
Awesome. No, that's great. Anthony, thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it. I'm going to put all these details up if you guys want to contact Anthony for walking tours. If you want to go to Ubuntu and have a look there, also contact him anyways and have a chat. If you want to get involved, maybe that's also something great, is try and get involved with something like this, something that you know will actually make a difference in these animals' lives. And also it's enrichment for yourself as well, getting to know these animals and more about nature. I'd say contact these guys and have a go. Anthony, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, JD.
Thank you.
Break. If you're enjoying this show, please click down below, like, subscribe. It doesn't cost you a cent, and you can do it while watching the show. We really appreciate all the input from your side. So if you've got anything you want to let us know, comment down below.